Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. If you are looking for the strategies to scale up your practice and the mindset you're going to need to do it, please hit subscribe. Every week, I interview a new lawyer who successfully implements the strategies that they're going to discuss with you to scale up their own practice. This week, I am very excited about this guest, not as if she needs any introduction, but we have Christa Ramey from Ramey Law PC. Her firm specializes in personal injury, construction defect, and bullying and abuse. For those of you who don't know Christa, she is a highly experienced trial attorney and someone I am fortunate enough to call my friend. Additionally, even though I've spoken with Christa and our paths have actually paralleled in the past, they did not coincide until pretty much JHQ. I mean, I knew who you were, but I didn't have the opportunity to get to know you. But we did have parallel paths for a little while. It's something that we share in common. But I learned a lot about Christa last night in our telephone call that I never knew, and specifically why Christa decided to become an attorney. And Christa, I do not want to tell that story for you. So please, if you would share with everyone in JHQ and YouTube why or how you got started on your infamous path.
I think that for me, everyone has a strong sense of justice, I think, that does this. If they want to see something, follow through with something, on a path that's what's righteous. And for me, when I was 16 years old, I came back from a fabulous spring vacation without my parents, which was fun, to learn that my aunt had been murdered. And she was living in San Diego, and she had just visited us a few weeks before in Dallas. And she was killed by someone she likely knew. It was someone she let into her home at 5 a.m. in the morning, and she was shot 3 times in the back. So it was someone that she then felt comfortable enough to open her door and let them into her home and to turn her back on them. And the police, the San Diego Police Department has never made an arrest. Her name was Georgia Jo Haggai. She was a fabulous woman, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and just an amazing human being. And my only aunt on my dad's side, my dad's only sister. And both of my grandfather and my grandmother have passed, and they, never received, any notification that there was any justice for her. And so when I went to law school and decided to go out here, I think in large part because my aunt was, this is where she lived in Southern California. And so I think that was kind of an additional, but I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to put people away that did to others what someone did to my family. And I never received that justice. But that was the kind of motivating force for me and why I decided to go to law school.
Man, that's a horrific story. Beyond anything that I could say, that's a horrific story, and I am terribly sorry for your family's loss. I know you mentioned to me that when you would travel to San Diego, you would sometimes check in with the cold case detective. Now, when you decided to go to law school, I know that was a motivating factor for why you wanted to become a prosecutor. But did you, at what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to be a lawyer?
Then and there, 16 years old. I think when shortly after this happened to my aunt, people would ask me questions about the death penalty and whether or not I believed in it, because I always had these strong views as a kid, probably growing up in the Greek Orthodox Church, which is in alignment with Catholic views. I felt very strongly in my support of no death penalty. Human life is sacred. And people would say, has this changed your opinion? No, it has not changed my opinion. I still firmly believe the death penalty is wrong in every circumstance. My aunt's case is a perfect example of that. One, I would want to kill whoever killed my aunt. That tells me it's wrong, right? And two, we haven't found who did it yet. which tells me that it's not always easy to find who did it, in cases like this. And so that is such a final punishment. And if you get it wrong, you can't undo it. And so I think that for me, I felt like I was just, that was my calling, that, everything happens for a reason, and that it was my calling then to be a lawyer because of what happened to her and because she never received justice. It was almost like that was my push in that direction.
Okay. Okay. And then after law school, the DA's office wasn't hiring, right?
There was a freeze that began sometime in the late 90s and didn't get lifted until the early 2000s.
In fact, we went to the same law school.
We did.
Southwestern. So you ended up not becoming a prosecutor, but apparently the universe or God or whatever you want to call it had a different plan for you.
I was working at a very large plaintiff's law firm, Rose Klein Marius. Love those guys still, and had a really great experience there. And we were doing mass torts, asbestos, groundwater litigation, sex abuse and harassment cases, and personal injury. And I realized, okay, so the DA's office isn't hiring, but I'm basically doing the same thing, right? I'm prosecuting a case on behalf of someone who's been injured or wronged, or and sometimes killed by someone else's wrongful conduct. And I realized that, there's a good, strong sense of justice and feeling that you're doing something righteous when you're prosecuting plaintiffs' cases. So I knew that if I couldn't be a DA, that this was the next best thing. And I felt like it was right. I interviewed with some insurance defense firms and it just didn't feel right. And I'm not making a judgment decision. My husband did defense work for a long time. I know you did, Ashley. So It's not a judgment decision. It just, for me, it wasn't a fit.
But isn't it, I think it's kind of funny because I remember there was a hiring freeze when I graduated too. And then they lifted the hiring freeze and I didn't get hired and I was destroyed. And then something inside of me said, maybe you've decided that that is your path, but that is not your path. And it was like, I was like trying to forge ahead on this road. I was so convinced that it was my dream. And like, I kept hitting these roadblocks and then half of me was like, no, persevere. Like, you've got to overcome this. And then the other half is, maybe this is something telling you that this is not your path. And the funny thing is when I let that go and I surrendered and started down a different path, it kind of makes me giggle now because I look back at that time like as if I was almost like a toddler who was throwing a tantrum because I wasn't getting my way. When the whole time it was like there was a parent out there going, let's go right. And now I realize that I said the same thing you did. This is the second best thing. And now I realize that what I do now and the opportunities that I have now to help people was really the number one path or the premier path for me. I have friends who are DAs. I have mad respect for what they do. I have even more respect for criminal defense attorneys because by the time you pick up that case, it's almost like the cards are stacked up against you. But I realized that this is the path for me. Did you ever come to that realization when you were traveling down the same path?
Actually, the DA's office lifted their hiring freeze after I'd been a lawyer maybe like 1 or 2 years. And unlike you, I just decided not to apply. I just didn't even want, really. This was like perfect for me, and I really loved where I was working and I had a really supportive work environment. It was very fun. And they took good care of me. And so I think that meant a lot as well.
Okay. And so you were there for how long?
So I started there in law school in like 97, 98 and worked there for, I think like 2.5 years, maybe after graduation. So maybe mid 2002 or 2003, sometime in there.
And then you went where?
And then I went to work for a medical malpractice attorney who was a JD/MD, Steve Heinberg.
And he's very well known. I remember when I did med mal defense, he was oftentimes on the other side and he was one of those that if you got him on your pleadings, you're like, ooh, he knows what he's doing. right?
Yeah.
So I bet you got some pretty good experience there.
I got some great experience. But one of the things I never got at all of my firms that I was working, I worked at 3 law firms before I started my own firm. I never got was trial experience, ever. I wasn't allowed to see the inside of a courtroom during a trial, period. I could go and argue the motions in limine or the motions to compel discovery responses or go to a status conference. But trial, I wasn't allowed to take a witness. So I realized that.
Was that frustrating for you?
When people that want to be a trial lawyer, they don't think that that means, writing legal briefs and, you want to be in court, right? And so, yeah, it was like banging my head against a wall.
And it's funny because I feel like I had this idea in law school that when I got out of law school and got a job, like that's all I was going to do.
Oh yeah.
Trials. And then I get out of law school and I was like, oh, there's political red tape. How do I get around this? And I can tell you in the defense, there was no way around it.
Oh yeah.
So, and I see you experience similar things on the plaintiff side. And at the time, I don't know about you, but when I graduated law school, there weren't even a lot of female trial attorneys.
No, there wasn't. There wasn't a lot at all.
And you and I discussed last night why we think that is. And I think that's, really interesting, especially considering when you started practicing law. Has a lot changed since then?
There are more small solo firms that are female owned. I do think it's changed. In our community in Justice HQ, I see a lot of women like yourself that have law firms. But in many respects, it hasn't. I don't know why. There's not parity for sure. More women go to law school than men now. Law school, like the demographics of law school. Yet there's not as many female-owned law firms. And I think that women are sometimes usually more risk adverse than men are in that regard. And so, we had, I had support. I had, a man who, loved me and supported me and encouraged me to do it. And so I feel like, if I didn't have that voice in my head, then I probably wouldn't have done it. I don't know.
So before John was encouraging you to start your own practice, and we're going to touch on that because I think that's really important. But before John started encouraging you, did you have that thought in the back of your mind that you wanted to start your own practice?
I did, and it terrified me.
Was there negative self-talk associated with that conversation in your head?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I don't have the trial experience. So how am I going to get clients to trust me with their cases, to take those cases to trial, right? It's like, it just seemed like I was setting myself up for failure. And I didn't have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank that I could use to rely on and live off of for a few years while I build and develop my practice. So I knew that I had to find, if I was going to do it, how would it ever work? And then really, because I hadn't had any trial experience, would I be any good at it? Would I know what I'm doing or would I fail miserably? And they don't teach you how to be a business owner in law school. They don't teach you about QuickBooks and accounting and bookkeeping and client trust account management and advertising. They don't teach us how to do any of that, right? So how do you do it?
So actually, I don't think they teach you. I don't think I learned how to practice law until I became a lawyer. Like I learned legal theory, legal concepts, the law, but I didn't learn how to be a lawyer. I remember I had one civil procedure and his name was Professor Parrish, and he mentioned discovery and he would tell discovery stories, but that's the only time I really even knew about that. Like I would love to see law schools implement a course on literally propounding and responding to discovery, legal objections, what CCP 998 offers are, like just practical practice-based tips like that. Like I would love that, but that's a whole nother Oprah. Back to Christa. So when did you start trying cases?
So by the way, John Demas might know the answer to this if he's listening. So I went on my own in November of 2004. I was 4 years out.
And you had not tried a case?
I had not.
Okay.
And I had worked for 3 very prominent law firms. Then sometime in the spring, I think it was, no, it was summer because it was super hot. It was in Riverside. And it was the Denison trial. And I got an email from John Demas at Demas and Rosenthal at the time. And he had a case down here and wanted local counsel to help him out and kind of, not get hometown or whatever, and have a home base where he could take depots of experts at an office and all of that. So we connected through a law school classmate of mine, connected us. And we tried that case in Riverside, and John, trusted me to take some witnesses, which I was scared to death. I was gonna I was like choking it down, the whole time, oh, don't fate. And we got a huge monster 7-figure verdict on my first trial out of the gate. And he gave me a copy of David Ball on damages after that trial, and just encouraged me. And I thought, this is good. Okay, I can do this. I got this. I know all the mechanics of a trial now, and I know that I'm not going to die.
So you thought.
Right? So I thought. You never know all of them. Something happens every trial, right?
And then what happened?
My first couple years of practice, it was primarily doing contract work. I did, law and motion and appeals and that kind of thing. And that kind of paid the bills. And then I also partnered with my husband on a lot of cases in his law firm. So he had Ramey and DeBlanc at the time with his former business partner, Brad DeBlanc. And so that was good.
So you had support in the background.
I had, yes, a lot of support.
Okay.
I didn't have to worry about paying the mortgage or anything like that. John made sure that I was able to develop my practice, and I owe him everything for that.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Let me ask you, as someone who worked for firms, big ones, and then decides to open their own practice, how important is it, in your opinion, to have a partner who is supportive?
I think it was everything for me. I'm not saying that you can't do it without a partner, right? I feel like for me, because of those voices in my head telling me I couldn't do it, to have him there, kind of pushing me along the way saying, you got this, and then when he would introduce me, we would go to SoCal Defense Mixers or whatever, and he would introduce me to adjusters, and he would talk, this is my wife, Christa. She's on the board of Consumer Attorneys of LA. She's a trial lawyer. He would get build me up. I know, right? So it was huge.
So how aside from doing the contract work in the beginning, how did you get the cases?
Referrals from other people, other lawyers. I would get some that way. The ones that I tried, it was a lot of younger lawyers that had never tried a case. And I was super active on Cala's listserv. And so they would, things would pop up. I have a case I want to try. I need some help. And I would jump right in. I'd be like, I'll do it. And so I really just kind of put myself out there, and I did everything. And there was a couple of attorneys, 2 in particular, Mike Alger and Greg Rizzio, that gave me some of their scraps too, when I was first starting out. And that was super helpful because they would have me do contract work for them, but they would also give me their cases to try that they really didn't want to try. And so that was amazing
And
experience.
did you have an arrangement with them where like I have some attorneys where I will take their trials and they cover costs. And
Yes.
that's how I can try the case.
Yes, I did, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. Now I do the opposite. I'll cover the cost and try the case now.
Right. So,
But then,
which allows you to take a larger portion of the fee.
Yeah.
But were you basically trying anything for the experience?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was trying limited jurisdiction cases. Highly recommend it. If you want trial experience, I mean, they're easy. They get done in a couple days. Do it.
And then what about cases you weren't even sure you could win?
Oh yeah, I took those too.
And did you do them for the experience?
I did. And a lot of them were easy choices to make to decide to try the cases because they weren't getting offers, right? Or they're getting really low offers. And
Okay.
so, and a lot of times I turned that around. Tried a case by in Compton with a real jerk of a defense attorney on the other side that just from the moment I got on the case was just nothing but a total piece of work, swearing at me, calling me a little girl. Oh yeah.
No.
At the end of the trial.
What's his name, Christa? What is his name?
Not going to do it. He's in a boat. I'm not going to do it.
Send me a text message. I'm going to go pay
Well,
that.
I'll send you privately.
Okay.
I'm going to broadcast.
Did not call you a little girl.
Well, at the end, when I tripled his offer by way of verdict and then got my 998 cost back, I wanted to say to him, how does it feel to get beaten by a little girl? I'll tell that story to young female trial lawyers. A lot of us, it's like, are you the court reporter? Nope, not the court reporter.
I've had that happen. I can't even tell you how many times.
Yeah.
Or I've had, when I was just a new attorney going to court, I would be asked if I was the clerk, what department I worked in, like all of it,
Yeah.
But to be fair, oftentimes I think it's also because I looked young when I started. The law hadn't, aged me yet. So
by the years.
I was so fresh faced. I looked like Neutrogena. But let me ask you this. So you start trying these cases to get the trial experience.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we discussed last night was the value of being a trial lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially you being a female trial lawyer, because we know, we talked about it. We know some of the bigger names, but I personally don't know a ton of female attorneys that try cases that aren't, Christa Ramey or Lourdes de Armas, Randy McGinn, Lisa Bloom. Like I don't know a whole lot of, the smaller female lawyers out there who want to try cases. And I think that, we were talking about how being a trial lawyer is just a different beast of its own kind, but you had mentioned the value when it comes to negotiating and advocating for your clients, because the insurance companies will know, and I know we've spoken about this on the show before, but they know who will go to the mat and who won't. Because I used to write the status reports where I would include not only a description of the client, but a description of plaintiff's counsel, who they are, whether they've tried cases, what their firm is, their search results on CalBar, whether they try case, whether they win the cases that they try, recent verdicts. Like we did a full-on analysis of who we were, in the cage with. And I'm wondering, did you experience increased settlement amounts because defense attorneys and insurance companies knew that Christa Ramey would try cases?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, initially it was easy to get the trials because they'd make you try the cases, right? And so you were getting that experience. And, I think that one of the bad things, I think, is that I was trying a lot of the smaller cases. So I didn't have like these monster verdicts in the beginning and didn't have the opportunity to get, high 6 and low 7-figure settlements until much later in my career. But I think that they naturally, and I don't mean this as a negative, well, I do mean this as a negative. I think that naturally adjusters think that men are going to get better results. And I think that it's because when you look at the top male trial lawyers out there, they have some monster results. But it's because they're given the opportunity to have and try bigger cases. And so one thing that I'm fully an advocate for is that to partner with, just like the guys do, and try cases with other female lawyers, whether you're a man or a woman, right? So, this is the one thing I love about like some of our male feminist friends that we have, like Bob Simon, like John Demas and others that are just, they're hugely supportive and want to promote female trial lawyers. And I think that we can teach each other so much. And, we deal with things as, I think it's Randy McGinn says, with a velvet glove instead of with a hammer, and,
Right.
and I think it's an advantage. And it is an advantage if they don't see you coming, on the cases you're going to try.
So I think one of the things we should put out there is for the women in JHQ who want more trial experience, post it in the Slack app so we know who you are. Because I know I can tell you, one of the challenges that I face is in terms of being a trial lawyer is it is too much for me to try a case and do, all the trial docs and the motions in limine and all the expert depots and everything while managing a full caseload. It's really hard. And one of my cases actually just got continued. And I was going to try that one alone. And I was like, holy hell, I'll never do this again. Like, this was way too much. So if there are other females out there that want to get more trial experience, put yourself out there, because I have personally 3 cases for trial coming up. 2 of them are lower value because they're the ones that can't settle. One of them I'm going to discuss with you, Christa, which I think is the higher value one. But if anyone else out wants to jump in and share the load and smell the inside of a courtroom and look a juror in the eye, let me know. Like, I'm more than happy to bring others on board. In fact, I look for it. So if you guys want to do that, let's hit me up, let me know. I'm sure Christa, same thing for you. I want to try a case with you.
I want to try a case with you.
Yeah, I'm putting that out there. But I think you're right. And I remember, especially on the defense, it was very frustrating for some of the female lawyers, so much so that some of the female partners just honestly gave up on ever being a trial attorney. And they would tell me that. And I'm like, oh my God, is this my future? And even some of the junior male partners, what they had to do to get approval from the insurance company to try the case over the named partners, in my opinion, was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so much red tape. And even as a female working at, plaintiffs firms where the named partner really is the one that carries the weight, it's difficult to get somebody. And I just, you know what? No, I said what I said. I feel like there is an idea out there that jurors will just somehow trust a man more and a man can do a better job. But
it's so wrong.
It is wrong. It is totally wrong. And I heard a very famous trial lawyer, Ms. Chang, say at a San Diego conference once, it was the closing conference, and on the stage was Mauro Fiore, Mike Alder, Gary Dordick, Chris Dolan, and Deborah Chang. And the guys were all kind of using the opportunity to talk about their past wins, and they were joking with each other. But Deborah Chang stood up and took that opportunity. She didn't mention one thing about her own trial experience. What she said was, there are not enough female trial lawyers. And the reason is because you guys, for whatever reason, won't give them the opportunity. And she said, but you need to know something. She said, you're not taking advantage of your resources because a female trial attorney is like a dog on its hind legs. You can't help but look. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant, because jurors will naturally want to see, and even if they're a little more critical or a little more judgy, they're going to pay attention when there's a woman at trial counsel. And she was like, it is incumbent, especially in this day and age, for the male partners to give trial opportunities to female trial lawyers. And I can say from firsthand experience in my career, I have watched those opportunities go to male attorneys, and the females have been passed over literally so many times. And you mentioned something else. You said we're not loud enough.
No.
And I didn't think about that, Christa. And I think you're right. We are not loud enough.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
About trying a case with my husband. And it was our second trial together. And we usually divide up whoever's going to do voir dire does opening. So it's the same person kind of flowing into it. Just a theory that I have. Judge Randy Rhodes, I will name names here, in Chatsworth. Terrible place to be in terms of jurisdiction and in terms of the judge. He wears shorts under his robe. And he'll come and sit on the bench with like a t-shirt on and a big, huge, giant soda. Mr. Ramey, are you ready to begin voir dire? Miss Ramey will be doing voir dire. Oh, he says. So we proceed to do jury selection. And then, Mr. Ramey, are you prepared to give opening statement? I'm quoting him, by the way. And John says, no, that would be Miss Ramey that's going to be giving the opening statement. And then he says, I'm just trying to figure out what you're going to do here.
No.
In front of the effing jury. We have a long way to go, babe. This was just 2 years ago. It's not getting worse necessarily, but it's not getting better universally. And so those types of attitudes have to change. And people like that should not be on the bench, in my view. Because those types of people sabotage your case. I will tell you, I've had, other instances of bullying by judges happening while trying school bullying cases sometimes, which is the irony. One of the jurors in that case said to me, I was appalled at all of the sexism that was occurring in this courtroom. I was the only female trial lawyer in the room. She said, between the judges and the witnesses and the other lawyers, and it wasn't lost on her that it was a school bullying case that it was happening in. And we did really well in that case. So I feel like judges need to go through more
sensitivity training.
More training, absolutely.
It's funny because I had a case, it was 3 plaintiffs. I represented the husband, someone else represented the wife, and another firm represented the father. All 3 of them were in the car. And Steve McElroy actually represented the father.
Okay.
And we show up, we're ready for trial, and the judge orders a settlement conference. And he wanted us to waive any conflict with him doing it because there were no other judges available. So we did. We're in court. It's a Friday, all day. And at about 4 p.m., now mind you, because I already knew the whole case, the first time we went back and he was asking us questions about both clients, I answered on behalf of the husband and the wife, because I had already known it, and I was basically like, go ahead and speak for both of them. At about 4 p.m., the judge clerk comes out and asks for 2 of the male attorneys and leaves me in the courtroom. And I'm like, what's going on, right? I had no idea. Well, they go into judges' chambers. They're there for about, 25 minutes. They come out, and the judge comes out, and he's like, okay, Miss Laiken, here's where we left off. They're going to work on getting a little more authority over the weekend. I was like, hold on. Did you guys have settlement discussions in your chambers? And he was like, yeah, I'm counsel of record. Can you explain to me why I was left in the courtroom? And he said, oh, no. I mean, you already said everything that needed to be said. We didn't need multiple attorneys. Excuse me, I'm counsel of record for your negotiating settlement on behalf of my client, and I wasn't in there? No, you're taking it the wrong way. I don't care how you think I'm taking it. I'm telling you how that looked. I'm the only female attorney here, and I was left in the courtroom. I have nothing else to say to you. And I walked out. And I got a phone call on Monday from that judge. And he said, Ms. Laiken, I just wanted you to know that I thought about what you said over the weekend, and I owe you an apology. And I was wrong. And I said, this phone call is a very classy move on your part, and I appreciate that. But I want you to consider the stories of the attorneys who are in your courtroom. And I said, Judge, I pay my own malpractice insurance. I'm counsel of record for that client. I said, when you left me in the courtroom, that looked like blatant sexism because you didn't want to hear my mouth anymore. And I'm sorry that my mouth inconvenienced you. Actually, I told him in court, I said, I'm not going to be sent back to the little girls' table, is what I told him.
Good.
And he apologized and he said, you know what, I can completely understand what you're saying. That will never happen again in my courtroom. And I thought about that. And then someone else actually tried a case in his courtroom the week after, coincidentally, and they asked me to just go, look in on the attorney who's trying the case. So when I walked in, he said, please don't tell me. I was like, I'm not here on this case. I just missed you so much. But I think the point is that I spoke up. And I feel like I only did that because I own my own firm, and there is no boss to tell me that I was somehow out of line or that I was somehow going to ruffle the wrong feathers. I can tell you, I don't think I would have spoken up if I had worked for somebody else, most especially a man at that point. So, if you're a female trial attorney, and that happens to you, I think there are very classy, very respectful ways of hitting that stuff head on.
And I think you have to, Ashley, or, I will tell you that my husband told me once that he wouldn't have believed what I told him had he not witnessed it. We need to make sure we're telling these stories. They're not war stories meant to say that all men are shits, and
no,
but they're important. One, that men hear them, right? But also that other women hear them, more importantly, because you need to know that you're not alone and that this happens and it's not right ever. And those judges should be reported to the PJ. I've done it twice, and I am not ashamed to do it again if another judge treats me like a second-class citizen because I'm a woman.
It's not man shaming. Let me make a very public statement. I am not a man hater. I love men.
Same.
It is not man shaming. It's a call for equality. And I think it's going to take several things that you touched on. It's going to take our male feminists, like the ones you mentioned, and Brett Sachs is also very, he comes to every show, to advocate for the women in their employ, to be, at the conference table, to be lead trial counsel or co-counsel, whatever. It's going to take women being louder, right? You said before, a lot of men, they market themselves. They have no problem posting their accolades. And for whatever reason, it gives us like this yucky feeling in our tummies to do it, right? But we need to do it. And number 3, speak up when that stuff happens. I had a defense attorney one time, is straight up in a deposition, I kid you not, lean over his client and whisper in a low voice, I think you're f***ing hot. In a depo. I was like, excuse me, are we on the record? Did you just say that to me? And I went and I spoke to, and he like, when we came out during a break, he was like, hold on, I want to tell you something. And he whispered it in my ear again. And I was like, you need to take a step back, get away from me.
That's not.
And I went and told my boss about it. And he said, do you want me to address it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Go ahead and address it so that this attorney gets the idea that I ran and told my daddy on him and I can't handle my own. He was like, okay, send the email, but CC me on it. And I was like, thank you. Because I really think, and at that time, I still even felt the need to go get permission from my boss to address totally inappropriate conduct by a defense attorney. I mean, a plaintiff's attorney, excuse me. I was a defense attorney. But I think the moral of the story is we need to be more aggressive when those things happen.
And don't be ashamed to, I think that a lot of times women are fearful that they're complaining too much, or that
we're
they're
overly emotional.
Yeah, overly emotional, or being too aggressive, or being, no, you are standing up for yourself and for other women, by the way, that have these sorts of things happen to them. I in that trial that I told you about, that bullying trial, that judge was both on the record in front of the jury and off the record privately horrible. He made a point of telling me how expressive I am. You're very expressive, Miss Ramey. I'm like, pardon me?
What does that mean?
He said, the jury can definitely see what you're thinking. You should be careful with that.
Thank you. Noted.
Thank you for your advice. I said, do you have any advice for the 4 male lawyers here, or is it just for me?
Yeah.
I said that to him. He called me to sidebar. I was clicking a pen while I was questioning the witness. And he called me to sidebar and took the pen out of my hand and kept it and sent me back in front of the jury. A witness on cross-examination was not answering my questions, but instead saying, well, what you want to do, counsel, is you want to ask me this first. So let me explain to you. And then I said, not my question. Your Honor, could you instruct the witness to answer my question? And he goes, he's allowed to explain himself. And so I finally said on the record, no, he's not, Your Honor. That's called redirect. And I just decided I don't even give a shit if I get sanctioned. It's not okay to allow myself to get abused emotionally and bullied by a judge just because he's wearing a black robe and sitting behind a bench.
So a female attorney comes to you and tells you her horror story by the judge behind the bench. What do you tell her?
To go to stand up for yourself when it's happening in the moment. I mean, if it happens once, let it go. But if it continues to happen, then the first time wasn't an accident, right? And then if it continues, not only do you stand up for yourself, you do what I did, and you report it to the PJ. That's why there's a PJ. These judges aren't bulletproof. And we need to make sure that others know how they're conducting themselves. Whether it's, that's why the state bar requires, bias training. It's for this exact thing.
And yet it is still happening over and over again.
It continues to. And like I said, I don't know if it's getting better, but hey, you got to stand up and you got to speak your truth.
I agree. And I think you need to do it without fear. I agree.
What's the worst? You're going to get sanctioned $1,000? Just pay it, whatever, who cares? I'll pay it for you.
Okay. So going back, now Christa is on her own. And you did that for how long?
So from 2004 to 2016, I had Hagee Law Firm.
Okay.
And
you were trying cases, doing contract work, having your own cases. And this is where you and I parallel. So what happened?
So my daughter is entering into her senior year of high school. And she's our youngest. And John and I we're talking about, she wants to go away to school out of state. She wants to go to the SEC. Oh my God, this is happening. Can we afford it? The rises and falls of our income as a plaintiff's lawyer, right? And I just was like scared. And so I went to work for someone, or I went to work for Mike Alder for a year and a half. And I was miserable. I went from 12 years of my own practice and my own identity, learning that I probably needed to shut down my website and my Haiti Law social media, because it probably was unethical to have it operating while working for someone else. And I still generated leads from that I gave to my husband. And I realized that I made a mistake. Yeah, I had the job security of a paycheck and insurance paid for and all of that, but I lost my identity. And so my husband had been transitioning away from defense work and now was exclusively a plaintiff's lawyer, could join CALA, was one of us. And we decided that, it was time that we
So
actually.
I think that's what makes your experience so unique. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because on this show, we're oftentimes telling people, don't be afraid, go take the leap. This is how you strategize. This is how you scale it up. This is how you do this. And you did all that and you left it, right? For whatever reason. And we talked about that on the phone last night, this fallacy in our heads that, we're not going to be able to financially cut it. And then right after you left Alder, I took your office, and I'm so not techie that when people called, the voicemail was literally Christa Ramey for like my first year. And even when people were like, why does your voicemail say Christa Ramey? Are you Christa? And I'm like, no, I'm not Christa. But it was like, you were in that office with me for like a year until I could finally get them to come and like change the voicemail system or whatever. And that's where you and I paralleled. But then you go and you go back, partnering up with John. And I told you last night, it's so funny because now that I do things my way, I have total autonomy, but also total risk, right? I think it would be very difficult for me to go back and work for someone else and face, their own political red tape and do all of that. I'd be like, man, this is BS, I'm out, right? Which I think is, I'm not going to get into that, but you made the decision to go back with John. What did you learn from being on your own for so long versus, and then going to work for someone? You learned that you lost your identity, but maybe you could be a little bit more specific about that, because I think the fears that a lot of solo practitioners face is what caused you to go work for someone. And then you found out those fears weren't actually reality.
Yeah, and I think that also is women fears, by the way. Because I will tell you that John Ramey did not feel like the need to pick up the phone and go to work for someone during that period of time, right? But he was also transitioning into plaintiffs, and his business was tight because of it. Because then, the defense business.
Yeah, you lose that billing, I totally understand.
So it was a big transition for us. And I think that, one of the things that, I learned several things. One, I love working for myself. I feel like I make good decisions. Sometimes I make bad decisions. I'm scared to hire someone that has the authority to write checks on my behalf because of some bad experiences. But I also feel like, with representing clients, I do make great decisions. And I also realized I liked the independence. Okay, I had to ask permission to be able to go on a vacation when I worked for someone. I'm 51 years old. I'm not asking anyone ever again if I can go on a vacation, And I also learned that I liked the ability to just, I didn't miss a water polo match, a little league game, a cheer performance, nothing. I saw it all and was there for my kids when I was on my own. And when I wasn't able to do all the things that I wanted to do with them and for them. And so that was difficult. And having people like, why are you leaving every day at 5:36? Because I get in at 6:30 in the morning so I can be with my family at night. And why do I have to explain myself to the other associates here, right? I shouldn't. And
I'm done explaining myself, period.
Yeah. And I also, quite frankly, I made more money working for myself than I have working for other people. And I thought the opposite would have been true, but it wasn't. So I think that you just need to, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, if you want to be on your own and do it, then you just need to realize that you're good enough to do it and just let those voices go away, right? Just do it. And there's a lot of people who will support you.
Yes, and I'm going to add a caveat to that. If you don't, because this is my existence, if you don't have a partner to tell you you can do it, right? And everyone knows I'm a big proponent of, choosing who you have in your circle, who you listen to. If somebody gives you an opinion of you, my standard response is, great. Your opinion of me is none of my business, right?
I love that. I'm stealing that.
Your opinion is none of my business. But if you don't have a partner to push you the way that you did, the way that Carla did, you got to be that person for yourself. Like, I will catch myself when I have that negative self-talk. I will catch myself and I'll say, stop it, Ashley. Like, I will literally parent myself because I don't have, I've got, my God, don't get me wrong. My resources, my friends, the most amazing people. And in large part due to JHQ, I found you, right? And I do have amazing resources, but I'm talking about that everyday life partner person. If you don't have that, it doesn't mean that you can't convince yourself and motivate yourself and be kind to yourself and push yourself to make the jump and to chase your dreams. You got to be able to talk to yourself the way you would expect your partner to, because if you really listen to your own thoughts, like, we are so much meaner to ourselves than we would ever be to anyone else. The things we say in our own mind are way more cutting than we would ever say to someone else that we truly love, right?
And so don't hate on other people's success.
No.
Because I feel like in the past I was like, well, why am I not getting these cases? And I'm better than her or him or whatever. You know?
My thing is, I'm like, well, how come they grew their firm so much faster than mine? You know what I realized? Flip it. Go make friends with that person. Go make them your friends.
Exactly. And in that regard, you're going to learn from that new friend of yours, right? I learn from my friends all the time. I learn from people that have been practicing law a lot less than I have, because they do something differently than I do it. And
it works. They call it practice of law.
It's a section of law.
Right. That's a practice for a reason. And I think that your journey is so interesting because it's like the things that a lot of us would be afraid of, you lived through, you experienced, and it turns out they weren't your truth anyway.
Yeah. And working with now my husband and that person that originally encouraged me on, this sounds so cheesy, but it's like natural. People are like, how do you work with your husband? Don't you get sick of him? No, by the way, we have our own caseloads. It's not like we're working together on every single case, right? But we also have a common goal. I'm never going to have a business partner that stabs me in the back, because my business partner is the man I'm committed my life to. Our goals are the same.
Because he knows there's community property, he better not. And I agree with you. And I think that's beautiful. Like, I think you've got the ultimate relationship. You've got the ultimate setup.
Carla asked what my favorite part of working for myself. And I think I talked about it. It's really that independence to be able to choose your cases, not, and to choose what you want to do, and have that kind of control. Because someone's not saying, you're going to take X, Y, and Z cases, here they are, right? It's me saying, when a client yells at, my intake person, saying, well, they're never going to be our client, because, I have that control. And I think that plays across every aspect of it. And so I think that's kind of like one of the best parts. And that plays into like why I got to see all my daughter's cheer performances and my son's Little League games. It's because I had control. And I think that you need to be in control of your own destiny. And that's what I love about being an entrepreneur and working for myself and having that. And rich or poor, right? So there's that. Yeah. And then the other question is from anonymous attendee. Hi, anonymous. And anonymous asked, how do I get so many TV appearances?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be on TV after this. I'm going on Court TV live with Julie Grant after this. So it's something I just kind of fell into. I hired a public relations firm to help me out with my practice.
You know what, Christa? Keep that answer really short, because I'm going to bring you back to talk about that whole part of your career.
Okay. And then, well, they've just helped me with, TV appearances and Daily Journal articles and the like. So
sorry, anonymous poster. You're going to have to stay tuned, because that is definitely something that we need to cover that could not be covered in an hour. I'm going to bring you back, and we are going to talk about expanding your legal career, using your legal knowledge outside of it. So move on to question 3. I'm glad that came up, because that just gave me that idea.
Oh, there is a question 3 now. Hang on. Justin. Hi, Justin. Okay, so chicken or the egg? When do you finally hire that first associate to work under you before the caseload becomes too? This is such a good question. And so I feel like for me, I've overhired because I've panicked about the amount of, like, you'll have that flood of cases that comes in every now and then, but then you'll have like maybe a dry spell. And, I think that for me, it's better almost to overhire and adjust than it is to not hire, because you're going to kill yourself. And you're the name at the top of the firm. You're the one that has to be, able to be, well rested and sane and market and, try cases and do all of the things that you need to be doing. So it's important to hire, but it's also important to hire the right person. Right now, John and I only have one associate who's out on maternity leave, and I miss her terribly. And you realize how important someone is to you when they're not around, right? But we also pay her well. We don't give her a giant salary. We give her a competitive salary, but we pay her a percentage. But she doesn't start getting that percentage until she settles the cases that equal her salary. So she has to basically pay for herself, and then she starts making money for herself and for the firm. And so I think to hire right and then pay in a way that motivates people to settle cases and push cases. I think that's huge. So that would be mine.
And that'll be another one that we're also going to tack on to the second hour, because I think you and I are a lot alike in that, with our families and our, running the firm and our workload. I think, especially with what we were talking about for my 40th birthday that is coming in September, nobody forget, thank you. Our life is important to us outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something I think you have actually got a good hold on. So I do want to talk about that one in the next one.
Sounds good.
Okay. Christa, I love you.
This was fun.
I love you. I'm so excited to see you and squeeze you when our vaccines are, I think you're fully vaccinated.
No, I'm not. You're fully vaccinated. I have one more. And then, as I told Julie yesterday, my one more, I'll be huggable. 2 weeks after that.
I'll be huggable, I think, in another week and a half.
So, second week of April, let's hug.
Yeah, I'm going to squeeze you so hard, and I'm so excited to see you. We're going to bring you back because I feel like there's so much more that I want to dig into. So we're going to schedule a session 2. And thank you so much for making the time. I know I had a scheduling conflict. We had to switch. You were like, let me check my calendar. You did it immediately. You jumped in there. Thank you so much for being a guest and supporting Level Up. So excited to bring you back. Everybody, thank you for your support. And thank you for joining this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. Sending you lots of love, joy, and success this week. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody. Bye, Christa.